My boss says if you can't make Karen happy, find another job. So I maliciously comply. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I work at a well-known huge grocery store in the bakery/deli. I've been in the general area now for 3 years, been in management, and recently stepped down this year to focus on college. In early July, I turned in my letter of resignation, letting them know that August 13th would be my last day. It's now about mid-July, and we've got an audit going on. Basically, everything has to be perfect. They ask you questions about your job, and everything has to be up to code. Up till this point, we've been having an issue with staffing because instead of hiring employees full-time, they hire everyone part-time. I'm the only full-time employee in my department. Because of this, there's never enough people to work, and they'll schedule 4 people working 3 to 4 hour shifts one night. And then the next, one person will be closing alone the entire night, usually me. I'm fine with that. I enjoy working alone. But this night was extra stressful with all the extra work I had to do because of the audit. I was all alone the night in question, and working a shorter shift than usual. We tend to close the deli around 8 p.m. and have 2 hours to clean up. I was scheduled till 8:30 and spoke to my managers about it and got permission to close at 5 so I could take my lunch break and have 2 hours to close up. My managers also said that I would be sent someone around 7:30 p.m. to help me close on time. Around 7 p.m., a woman comes up to the meat slicers asking for some sliced meat. I tell her I'm sorry, but we're closed for the night. She chews me out for a moment and complains that she comes here every other night and we're always open. I try to explain to her that we're low on staffing and I've already cleaned the slicers for the night, and she leaves. About 5 to 10 minutes later, my assistant manager walks up and asks me what the problem was. She had gone to management and demanded that we slice her meat. I explained the situation, and his response was to berate me for closing the deli down early and tell me to help her and just clean it again. "Just stop being difficult," is what he said. After slicing her some meat, we ended up being out of a different kind, and she walked out of the store leaving everything behind, and meaning I had created more cleaning for nothing. I was ticked. I took a walk to cool down and went to find my buddy who was supposed to come over at 7:30 p.m. and ask when he was coming over. When I found him, he told me he wouldn't be able to come over because the assistant manager had come over and given him a long list of stuff to do for the rest of the night. That ticked me off even more. I found the assistant manager and was like, "Dude, what the heck?" and reiterated that I was leaving at 8:30 p.m. and needed some assistance. He told me to once again stop being difficult and just to get it all done. I told him there was no way I was getting it done in time and said my schedule says I leave at 8:30, so I'm leaving at 8:30, regardless of how much is left to do. I guess he hadn't gotten the memo that I was quitting soon. And so, in response, he tells me that if I can't do my job well enough, that maybe I should start looking for another job. That was my breaking point. After 3 years of working with crappy management and their backwards ways, I decided I didn't need to do it anymore. I told him, okay, found some of my favorite coworkers and told them goodbye and that it was nice working with them, and walked out. I haven't gone back since. They failed their audit. 6 other employees in my general area quit shortly after that time, mostly due to college. The rest are planning on leaving as well. As far as I know, the entire area is screwed up. I hope the manager got his butt chewed out, but I doubt it. I've reported some of the managers there for serious issues, like telling me they were too busy to help women whose lives were being threatened in store, retaliation, and threatening to fire people if they didn't work overtime, causing someone to lose Medicare and ration their insulin and be hospitalized for a few weeks. And they never went anywhere. Screw that place. Yet another example of how employers need employees more than they think. We can find a job at any old grocery store. It's not a big deal. But you have someone who's been there for a few years and works hard, and this is how you treat them? Everyone has a breaking point. And when you're not going to give them any support when they need it, they're not going to care too much to help you in return. There are so many stories like this, where an employee walks out after being threatened with being fired, and the whole place falls apart without them. I guess sometimes that has to happen before management learns its lesson. Hopefully they did, because I'm sure this was not worth it for them. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. My brother wanted me to make an exception for his son at my child-free wedding because he's a rainbow baby. I, 33-year-old female, am getting married come October to my fiancé Derek. Wedding planning went okay, but as soon as we started sending out invitations, the problems began coming our way. The thing is, Derek and I decided the wedding would be child-free. It wasn't out of the blue, and this possibility was there. I have a 42-year-old brother, Paul, who's married, but he and his wife suffered from several miscarriages and failed pregnancies during their marriage. They finally were blessed with a son that everyone calls a miracle and a rainbow baby. My nephew is 4 years old, and everyone salutes him and treats him like a king, and also turned a blind eye to any of his misbehavior, which has caused him to become loud, destructive, out of control, and punishless. When Paul received the invitation and found out kids weren't included, he and Mom lost it and decided on an urgent meeting with me and Derek. Paul said that his son was an exception. I said no, and this rule is to be followed by everyone. He argued that I was making a mistake by excluding my nephew. He and Mom went on about how he's a miracle since he's their rainbow baby / grandbaby. Then Paul said he had no problem with my wedding being child-free, but he expects me to make an exception for his son. He explicitly said, "You can have your child-free wedding, but you're gonna have to make an exception for my son, and you know why." Derek apologized and said we won't, since our friends and my in-laws had kids too, but now had to leave them at home and arrange for babysitters, and advised him to do the same. Paul was offended and said if his son isn't invited, then he won't come, and gave us an ultimatum to drop out if we don't edit his invitation. That caused my family to freak out because Paul is the only and oldest sibling I have, and they said his presence at the wedding is a must. I had an argument with my mom and dad, who said the fact I'm choosing this to be my hill to die on and treating Paul and my nephew like that was appalling. They emphasized how my nephew is special, and I should be ashamed to exclude him even when the wedding is child-free. My parents said if Paul won't come, then they won't come either, which devastated me a lot and caused me to break down. Derek said they were the ones being unreasonable and disrespectful of our wedding, and maybe we should wait and they'll come around eventually. But they've doubled down. This morning, my aunt and uncle dropped out as well as my other uncle last week. Paul told everyone, and they're all supporting him, and won't come unless I make an exception for my nephew. But that will upset my guests, and they'll call me a hypocrite. My family's divided, saying I'm basically ruining my own wedding. Quick edit, my family have normalized this behavior from Paul and also his wife. Whenever I point out how unacceptable it is to expect everyone to cater to my nephew and his parents, Paul would chime in with she's jealous because he and his wife have a kid and I can't and don't. I was married before Derek and divorced my ex-husband for my inability to have kids, but that's another story. Oh, that quick edit at the end kinda changes everything. Maybe some of your family is having a different view as to why you're doing this, but that's not really what this is about. It's about the wedding, and about having a good time and not having to worry about kids causing mayhem. We all know how kids can be, and while it would be nice to have kids there are some times where maybe it's just best if they stay home, especially if there's only a couple that we're talking about here. Just look at it as the parents having a night off, and having a good time without having to worry about the kids. Also, being the host of a wedding that has kids now attending requires a whole bunch of other stuff that you now need to take into consideration. Different meals, a separate table, entertainment, all that kind of stuff. I totally understand the decision to want to keep it a child-free wedding, especially if it's a small wedding that they're paying for themselves as well. The way the family supports this behavior is just kinda crazy. This kid doesn't deserve to be treated like God's gift to earth just because they were born. The world doesn't revolve around any one person. I just feel really bad for our original poster here, because it's a tough situation to be in. Obviously, you want all your other family members to be there, but them then using that to pressure you into inviting the hellion is just wrong. That's your day. They're supposed to be there to support you, not give you a hard time over something like this. My entitled neighbor's upset that I won't let her kids use my pool unsupervised. I just moved into a new place with a pool out back. Neighbor lady comes up to the fence the other day while I'm having a beer and doing some yard work. After the greetings and whatever, the rest goes like this.
The people who lived here before would let my kids use the pool in the summertime. They're really sad about not being able to anymore.
Why guilt trip me? Just ask. Oh, well, I don't mind as long as you're there. I can't watch them.
Well, the last people would watch them because their own kids were there too. They'd just sit out back.
Okay, but I can't watch your kids. If they're gonna be in my pool, you have to be there.
I don't have time. I don't know why you can't just sit there and watch them so they can swim.
I had no idea how to respond to this. She caught me so off guard. Now I think I need to change the lock on the gate because I'm afraid she has a key and will send her kids over alone. I don't have a problem with the kids using the pool, but I don't want to babysit the kids of someone I don't know around water. Yeah, you don't want to be responsible for some random stranger's kids. I totally understand that. And she says she doesn't have time. Why does she think that you do? You have a life as well and things you need to do besides watch her kids because she can't be bothered. Sounds like you've gotten yourself quite the neighbor there. I get the feeling based on this lady's first interaction, this isn't going to be the last issue you have with them. My Karen neighbor has complained to the HOA about everyone who has a dog, so we all let our dogs use her yard as their bathroom. So I have a Karen for a neighbor. She's a grumpy old woman with a live-in son in his 40s and no other family or friends. And when I say she's a Karen, we're talking to the point that she came into my property to yell at our landscaper about a boulder he was installing on our property. Something about believing it would fall over onto more of our property. A few months after we moved in, we received a letter from the HOA saying they had received complaints and asking that we make sure we're mowing, watering, and maintaining. I chalked it up to moving into a nicer neighborhood and made an effort to mow twice a week instead of my normal ones. I added a little extra time to the sprinklers and figured all was good. Apparently, it wasn't, as we received another letter stating the complaints had continued, and the HOA wanted to talk with us to see what the problem was. I should note, we had just moved in not that long ago and hadn't landscaped the back yet, so we're letting our dogs pee on the front at night, which lead to the inevitable patches of bright green grass that grow stupid fast. Now, I'll freely admit that I don't keep my yard to the level of some of my neighbors, but it was in perfectly good shape outside of some green spots in an otherwise average-looking yard, and I do my best to keep things mowed and looking decent. Turns out our grumpy neighbor had taken real offense to this and started complaining to the HOA. The hearing ended up being mostly incoherent rambling, but the bottom line was she didn't like how our lawn looked with the green spots. While the HOA agreed this was not her business and definitely not theirs, I decided she was right and we should stop letting our dogs out in the front to pee, as I also don't like the green spots. Now I put them on the leash and let them do their business in her yard. And I'm clearly not the only one, as her yard is now covered in pee spots and dead spots on her actual lawn, which I know wasn't my dog as the leash didn't go that far. I'm pretty sure she's just complained about everyone with a dog, and now the entire neighborhood takes their dogs to her yard. The best part, she actually does a crap job taking care of her own lawn. There's weeds and crabgrass everywhere. She just waters it almost non-stop. So today I got to report her to the HOA for her yard looking like total crap. If it were any other house, and there are much worse, I wouldn't care at all. But this lady wanted lawns without spots, so I'm just doing my part to enforce her rules. Edit, to everyone hating on HOAs, they're hit or miss for sure. But in this case, they didn't do anything but tell me someone complained, and then tell her I wasn't violating any rules and they weren't going to be involved. Also, HOAs are often surprisingly easy to take over. You just have to skip the whining about how terrible they are and do some work instead. If the HOA is that bad, talk to some neighbors. Tell them you're going to run for the board and get them to vote for you. Then help others do the same. And remember what you hated about the previous board. Be forewarned. Everyone finds a reason to complain, but no one's willing to help out. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with HOAs. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to people telling you what to do with your property, and a lot of Karens trying to get up in your business. In this case, this HOA seems to have acted appropriately. I honestly don't know how they work entirely, but it kinda just sounds stupid from the outside looking in. I get that we need to keep the neighborhood looking good for the sake of property values, but you have to be reasonable about things, which this HOA is, to their credit. I guess the issue really isn't HOAs. It comes down to Karens. They unfortunately just tend to congregate there. My awesome English teacher let us know that the administration told him he wasn't to tell us that we didn't need to show up to class. Back in senior year of high school, I had an amazing English teacher, very engaging and passionate about what he did. A great class to have first period. Well, the class is all seniors, and it was the end of the year and finals were coming up. You know how that goes. Our school's schedule for finals was 2 periods or classes per day for 3 days. The administration, wary of senioritis and kids skipping class, warned the teachers that they must hold class on the day of their scheduled final, and that they cannot tell the students that they don't need to show up. So my teacher, the week before finals, gets up in front of the whole class and says, "For our final, we'll be watching a movie. Now, the administration has told me I'm not allowed to tell you that you don't have to show up to this final." He stares at us and pauses for a few seconds, so I will not do so. Needless to say, I got some extra Z's that finals week. Yeah, like, why are you gonna make the kids be there if they really don't need to be? If they've already got a lot going on that weekend, let them have those extra few hours. What's it to you? They're leaving the school. They're done. This is their finals week. It doesn't matter if they miss that class. If there's someone who really cares about perfect attendance, then they can choose to be there. But for those who want to use that free time, why not let them? They are practically adults. Stop treating them like they're 5. Let them have the afternoon off. My 10-month-old kitten decided to attack me in a very sensitive area. I had just come home from work after a particularly hectic and busy day. Usually I'm a take a shower before bed kind of guy, but after this particular shift, I decided the first thing I needed to do when I walked in the door was get the grime of the day off me. I quickly told my wife and son hi and immediately jumped into a steaming hot shower. The aches and pains of the day washed away. Temporarily. Now, for a bit of backstory, 99% of the time I can come home for lunch and eat a meal with my wife who works from home. However, this day I had to work in a remote location and was not able to do so. So, once my wife heard the water turn off, she came into the adjoining bedroom to talk to me since we hadn't had a chance to chat all day. But something else you must know is we have a 10-month-old kitten. For lack of a better word, he's a bit of a demon. One minute he's snuggling you and the next he's fighting you. He also adores my wife and follows her everywhere she goes. My wife comes into the bedroom and lays down on the bed to start chatting about her day. I get out of the shower and come out naked to talk with her since I'm eager to chat with her too. I figured no towel is needed. I can let my body air dry and cool off with the fan, especially since the day and shower were so hot. No big deal, I assumed. So there I was, leaning on the edge of the bed, naked, talking with her about her work. Little did I think about the fact that my very hot shower had made certain anatomy of mine much more danglier. Nor did I think about the fact that a demon could be hiding under the bed. So I'm chatting with my wife happily about an order she received, when suddenly my happy sack is knocked to the left with what I can only assume in the moment was razor blades. The sudden shock and searing pain made me jump up and run faster than I thought possible. Apparently the demon had decided I had a new toy dangling between my legs, and for some sadistic reason decided his claws were necessary for playing with new said toy. Luckily, I survived the ordeal with just a scratch and a bit of blood loss, but I now live in fear of my new overlord. He asserted his dominance and showed me he can destroy me without warning at any time, and he's not even a year old yet, so I have many years of dread in front of me. Oh, poor guy. I'm sure that didn't feel great. Yeah, unfortunately, kittens at that age are completely mischievous. Sometimes they're cool and they're all snuggles. But yeah, they can flip at the drop of a dime and all of a sudden scratch you to heck. They think they're playing, but don't understand how freaking much that hurts. It's almost like the smaller their claws, the more they hurt. It does sound like our original poster learned from this experience, though, and we'll be on guard going forward. Maybe make sure you've at least got that towel on. Otherwise, that kitten might decide that that toy is fair game again. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.